Good afternoon, everyone. This one is working, fine. So pleasure to be here, and really nice to be succeeding this very interesting panel. I think I can only concur with everything that has been said about the value of the bizliners. And we wanted to take the opportunity of this session to tell you a little bit about something that influences a lot these bizliners. It's the global aviation trends for the airliners. Because these bizliners, they are derived for their sisters, the airliners. And the trends we see on the market for commercial aviation is having a significant impact for the bizliners. So I will first talk a little bit about the market, and then later on about the technologies, because this is really where we see the impact of the airliners world on the bizliners. For the market, it's very interesting because what we will see is that the demand for airliner will guide and influence the availability that we have for bizliners, for the new built aircraft, of course, but by correlation, it will also impact the second-hand market. So just to start with, before looking into the future and the market forecast, let's have a look to the past. What we see here is a snapshot showing the world air traffic for commercial aircraft since 1990 all the way to today. What's interesting is that the blue curve is the actual numbers, and what you can see in orange is actually what was forecasted back in 2000 in the Airbus global market forecast. And I'm pretty sure that the Boeing, I think you call it a CMO, so the global market forecast from our friend from Seattle, would also have shown, let's say, a very, very similar curve. So what is interesting is that you can see that through time, basically, these forecasts have proven to be mostly correct. The second thing we can see is these gray bars. They are let's say, the disruptions that have happened through times. You can see 9/11, the financial crisis, COVID, and this is the second message, is that air traffic and air transportation has proven to be very resilient through time, despite all these crises thrown at the business. And you can see that despite all these crises, the market has always recovered and came back in line with the trend that we forecasted back in 2000. COVID was of a very special case, but even then, we did recover from it. So you can see from the depths of 2020, when the whole air transport came to a stop. At the time, you can see the gray lines, we started to make forecasts for when air traffic would be back to normal and when normal life would resume. And there was a pessimistic and optimistic scenario. And you can see that reality has proven to be in between. And air traffic has reconnected with the 2019 level in 2024. So this again is showing the resilience of aviation. So now, having that in mind, let's look forward to what we think will happen in the next 20 years. What we see for the long term is that first, we will have a period in the next 2-3 years where we will still catch up to recover with what was lost during COVID. Because yes, we have recovered with the 2019 level, but actually what we see is that the demand for transportation worldwide is actually above that. So today we are in a capacity-constrained environment. And there's not enough aircraft on the market to sustain the demand that we see for air transport. And this is also something that has benefited our industry, I think, during COVID and still today, is that there is this capacity constraint, and the capacity we can provide is something that is having a lot of value today. So during these 2-3 years, we think that we have, on average, a growth rate of 8%, which is enormous, because before COVID, we used to have 4-5% of growth annually. But then beyond that, we will reconnect with a more normal path. And then a traffic growth of around 3.5-4% all the way to 2043. That's what we think will happen. And this is based, like the forecast we had in the past, this is based on econometrics. So it is based on economy first. So we think that this growth of air transport will be driven by economy, the world GDP growing at 2.6%, world trade growing above 3%, and then it's also about demographics. So the world population in the next 20 years will increase by 1.3 billion of people. And what is more important for air travel and also for our industry is that we can see the middle class and the upper class will grow even beyond that. So we foresee 1.7 billion more people within the middle class in the next 20 years. And then urban population will also outpace the growth of population overall. So these are really the drivers that will drive this doubling of air transport again in the next 20 years. So the interest of discussing that was also to see what will be the impact on the capacity, on the availability of aircraft. What we have here is basically the translation of the demand for seats, for capacity, into aircraft. So here you can see today, this is the fleet of commercial aircraft in the world today, roughly 24,000 aircraft. It's mostly a mix of Airbus and Boeing aircraft. And then you can see the second column is what we think will be needed in 2043. And what you see is that out of all the aircraft flying today, by 2043, only 5,000 of them will remain in service. So you will need 18,000 aircraft already to replace the aircraft that will be retired. And then you will need another 23,000 to cope with this growth and the doubling of air traffic. So all in all, what we see is that there will be 48,000 aircraft in service for commercial aviation worldwide. And this will translate into 42,000 new deliveries. And for these new deliveries, we already have sold many aircraft that we have not delivered yet. So today, the backlog of Airbus, Boeing combined should be around close to 15,000 aircraft. But that means there is still 26,000 additional airliners to be sold to cope with the demand. If you think about it, 26,000 aircraft to be sold. This is more than the complete commercial aviation in service today in the sky. So how does this translate in terms of availability? Well, with a backlog of 15,000 aircraft, I think on the Airbus side we're close to 9,000 today, it means there is a strong availability constraint today for the short-term demands. If you want a single aisle or a wide body today, there will be nothing available before the early 2030s. So people could say, yeah, well, maybe this will slow down and there will be less aircraft being sold and we can wait. Well, probably not, because when you see this open demand still for 26,000 aircraft, it means the pressure on availability will remain. And the bizliner, they are heavily impacted by that, because for single aisle, the ACJ A320, ACJ A319s, we are highly dependent from the commercial aircraft demand. So today, if you're an airline, you have to wait until probably 2031 to get a new A320. We have secured some slots for the ACJ, and I'm sure our colleagues in Seattle do the same for the BBJs. But this number of slots that we have, we cannot now go beyond it until 2030. So we have 4-6 slots a year available, and that's it, pretty much. And for the wide bodies, there is no pre-allocated slot. Meaning, like for an airliner, now you have to wait until 2030 and beyond if you want to get a new wide body. And we wanted to pass this message because people don't often realize that this pressure on demand availability for airliner is really putting also this pressure on the bizliner. And this aircraft is a very good example of it. This is the 350. Again, same, nothing will be available before the early 2030s. And just to give you a scale of the demand that we see at the moment, there is today a backlog of, a total sales number of 1,300 aircraft for the 350. Out of these 1,300 sales, 30% of them have happened in the last 2 years. You can recall this aircraft was launched now more than a decade ago. 30% of the sales in the last 2 years, and we still see today many, many other campaigns for this type of aircraft. So for all your potential customers that are interested in wide bodies, you can also realize the pressure that is there and will remain on the wide bodies. So now this was a global outlook. Let's focus a bit on the Middle East. So if we look at the Middle East in terms of the econometrics, we can see that if we look at the GDP per capita and the GDP growth, Middle East is actually quite centered with the worldwide average, pretty much in line with Asia Pacific. Now, as you know, there are discrepancies within Middle East. if we would look, for instance, at Saudi Arabia or UAE, you would see a growth of around 2.5–3%, but with a GDP per capita much further to the right. And this also means that the reason why this region is very strong for bizliners. I guess you know it. This is here in Middle East, we have the #1 region worldwide for the bizliners. I think worldwide there's 420 bizliners today in the world, and 130 or 30% they are here in this region. So it's a strong region. On top of that, it is also growing strongly. What we've seen in the last 4 years is that there's been 30% of traffic increase. And discussing with several of you today, we see that the growth is still there. Maybe not as high as it was last year or 2 years ago, but the growth is still there. So Middle East will remain a very strong region for bizliners. And most importantly, we see a very aging fleet. So if we look at all the large jets, 40% of the total fleet is above 15 years old. So you think about that. There's a strong market with a strong growth, a strong demand, and behind that, you need capacity, but you have a fleet which is aging. So you will need replacements. Put that in perspective with the capacity constraint I mentioned below, and you can see why we believe it is now that operators and customers need to move in order to secure the capacity to cope with this demand. And just as an anecdote, actually, last year at ACJ, we had actually a record year, so again in line with what we've seen before, a record year with 17 orders and commitments, and the vast majority of this demand was from here in the Middle East. So again, this is really in line with all that we've seen before. And the reason why bizliners are in high demand here in Middle East, I guess that you know that, is because, as was discussed in the panel before, they offer the space and comfort, they offer the capacity for luggage that is required here by Middle East customers. And as was discussed in the panel before, these aircraft also bring the reliability, the economics that people value here in this region. So now, we see there is a lot of demand, but to cope with this demand, we need to deliver aircraft that also bring the required efficiency. I will not go in details to that chart, but what this is showing, again looking to the past, is that from 1990 to today, there's been a quadrupling of the air traffic volume worldwide. This is a dark blue, but at the same time, the light blue curve is showing you the increase in fuel consumption, which was way below it. The translation is that the purple curve is the fuel efficiency. You can see there's been significant improvement in fuel efficiency despite the quadrupling of the world air traffic. So this is what air traffic is bringing, and this has allowed us to remain overall at 2% of the total share of CO2 emission in the world, despite the fact air traffic has been quadrupling. So looking ahead now again to tomorrow and to the next 20 years, with all this demand and all these new aircraft to bring to the market, it will be pretty much the same story. A story of efficiency, because we need to bring this efficiency not only for the economics of the airline, but also for the pathway to sustainability. There are many levers to achieve that. The first one is the fact that today, worldwide, there's only 30% of the fleet which is made of new generation aircraft, meaning there's a huge potential to improve efficiency and to improve also the CO2 emission by introducing new generation aircraft. These are the airliners. The good news for you and for the bizliner market is that now all the bizliner platform, they are based on new generation aircraft. So whenever you phase in an ACJ 320neo, an ACJ 350, or the equivalent from our competition, you will basically contribute to the improvement in efficiency and sustainability. The second way to improve is to improve the operations. So I won't go through that chart in detail, but basically we are working through every stage of the flight, from takeoff, cruise, descent, to really be able to improve as well the efficiency of the flight and the emissions. Just as an anecdote, I wanted to highlight that one, and this is a project we have been doing in Airbus for some time called Fellow Fly. We've been investigating the potential to basically having aircraft flying like birds, and basically surfing the wake vortex generated by aircraft. By doing that, you use this wake vortex energy to generate lift that the aircraft doesn't have to generate himself, and this can lead to 5 to 10% fuel efficiency on a long-haul flight. So this is again to show what the OEM are doing to try to improve not only the aircraft, but the way we operate the aircraft. Beyond that, beyond the aircraft themselves, a big chunk of the equation will be linked to SAF. So here, as a global aviation community, there's a lot we can do. First of all, it's about advocacy, and we're doing that a lot. You can hear us during this conference talking about SAF. Technological leadership, yes, it's about supporting the new production pathways, because we need production, of course, for aircraft. And this one is quite important, demand aggregation, because we need to be able to consolidate the SAF demand, and this, we think OEM are in a good position to act as pillars for this consolidation. And that's why at Airbus and ACJ, we've launched a book and claim system to broaden the SAF adoption. So if you're interested, we have a few customers already that have joined us on this journey to have this book and claim community. You can contact us, and we can see how you can be part of that. So this was quite short term, new aircraft, operating them better using SAF. And then very long term, you may have heard about it, it's also about breakthrough technology. So one technology we're investigating is hydrogen-powered aircraft. So here you can see project for the so-called ZERO-E. So there are several scenarios considered, from a classical turbofan aircraft like this one, or a classical turboprop, but also investigating concept like a blended wing body. So these aircraft, by flying on hydrogen, would be clean aircraft and would be the significant enablers as well to reach the ambitious target that we have in terms of sustainability. You can see there are aircraft that could carry 100 to 200 passengers, all the way up to 2,000 nautical miles. So we're not here into business jet territory, but if you think about it today, an A320 can fly 3,000, 4,000 nautical miles. So if you go to the bottom, the low payload part of the payload range envelope, there's certainly some stuff that can be done with this platform as well. So this takes me to the end of the presentation. So again, yeah, what we wanted to share with you is that when we think about the bizliner market and these VVIP aircraft, they are heavily impacted by the demand for commercial aviation and this demand for 42,000 new aircraft. So it is a story of really capacity availability that will be constrained in the future. And specifically for the Middle East, where we see this very strong growth and aircraft aging, it will also be a story of capacity and availability here in the Middle East. And this new capacity that we'll bring forward will come with new technology. And this will be, first of all, the new aircraft we have today, operating them in a better manner, and potentially later on, adopting the SAF and the breakthrough technology. Voilà. So hope this was clear for all of you, and I think we have a little bit of time for questions, if any. Thank you.
You have one question on Slido, which is, which Airbus models are currently in highest demand?
Interesting question. So if we look at the pure volume, it will be the single aisle, so the A320, A321. And that's interesting because talking about this gain in efficiency that we have achieved, a lot of that has been made by using a platform, moving on to the larger platform. So an A320 is more efficient per passenger than a A319, and a A321 is even more efficient. And today, this A321 and the A321neo is really the aircraft which is in the highest demand today. Now, interestingly, so this is for the pure volume, what we see as well today is that there's two families of aircraft where the backlog that we have is above the actual fleet in service. So this is the A220 and the A350. So we can really see for these two models, which are the latest technology platform on the Airbus family, and we have the equivalent for ACJ, with the ACJ 220 and the ACJ 350. These are the aircraft that are really picking up some speed now in terms of demand.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome.